You have a really long relationship with Nolan, maybe? Well, other riders did the same job. So now, the riders change of weathers, helmets constantly. I suppose by money, no. So in your time, to have fidelity with a brand is more important that as today or not?
I think in my time, maybe yes, but I think also even in my time, many riders were changing. As soon as something they were not happy, they would change, or somebody offer more money, they change. For me, I never stayed somewhere for the money. If I wanted more money, I would continue racing, and even in 1 year, make almost more than I made in my career. So money has not been the big factor for me like the other riders. Nolan showed me a lot of loyalty in the beginning. They gave me my first sponsorship when the helmet quality was very low, but we built together step by step, year by year. The helmets were improving amazingly, and we went from being behind of all the other manufacturers to in front. I believe we had the best helmet on the grid when I was racing, and they continue to this day. And so with the same thing with the leathers, etc. Because I showed loyalty to Nolan and I didn't go for the next paycheck. Even something that was very special to me is I had a 2-year contract with Nolan for 250s. But for my second year, I went into MotoGP. So Nolan tore up the contract and wrote up a MotoGP contract. So they could keep me for 2 years for the same price as in 250. But because I was in MotoGP, they said, no, you're a MotoGP rider. You need to be paid a MotoGP rider. So then they tore up the old contract, half in the middle of the contract, and made a new one. So we didn't ask them to. I didn't ask for anything. And they did this to show loyalty again. And for me, I will always appreciate everything they did.
And you was racing from the first of the century to the 18th. What is it? Your last
2012.
12.
Yeah.
And what was the evolution of the helmet of the Nolan, especially on this time? Because you just used the helmet in race.
So the first year I used Nolan a little, maybe 1 or 2 times, was in 2001. But in fact, my first full season was 2002 with Nolan.
In Spain in 125?
No, in 2002 I was World Championship 250. So by the time we got to 2005 250, the evolution of the helmet was incredible. Already we had an amazing helmet in just a few years. Went from probably the lowest helmet on the grid, all of a sudden we are very close to the best helmets on the grid. And we had some problem in a race in China, 2005 wet race. Everybody during that day had a lot of condensation, a lot of problem with the visor, no vision. Not only Nolan, everybody had the problem. We had the problem in Portugal and in China, and then after that we fixed the problem. We worked really hard in the next 2-3 races to find some solutions. We find the solutions, and then we never had a problem again. All the other manufacturers start to have the same problem. No, not only this. You can do this, it doesn't fix the problem because it's a temperature. Temperature from
inside,
the air.
inside.
Because this is just for the breath. But if you have the temperature, which is different, then you create the condensation. It's a strange situation that doesn't happen so often, but when happen is fog is sometimes easy to fix. Condensation, you don't get rid of it. It's very, very difficult. So we fixed the problem in such a short space of time. All the other manufacturers had months and months of the same problem, and we already fixed it. So the improvement from 2002 to 2005 in just a few years, already the helmet was a big improvement. And then 6, 7, 8, we just continued to improve every single aspect. Every new model we brought out was a big step forward, and has been a really great journey with them.
And did you test the new helmet, the 804, no?
I haven't had a chance to test
No?
yet. My first time this morning to see everything.
Yes, I was thinking that
complete.
you first. Okay.
So I've seen, but not been able to touch because Australia to Europe is quite a long way.
So you are normally not racing, obviously. So you ride on bike, usually in Australia?
Not so much the last 5 years. I had a big problem with the health,
Yes,
so
yes.
I was not able even to leave the house. It was very difficult for me to have the energy to do anything. So in the last year and a half, I've started to do a little bit more, start to ride a little bit more, and I still ride sometimes around the streets, not so much around home, but sometimes. And so yeah, but unfortunately, it's just step by step coming more opportunities to do something.
Okay, and I hope so. And then, if you would talk about a little bit about some MotoGP in Brazil, no? The first, when you ride on Ducati, you won the first World Championship for the brand in 800. So then Ducati passed a lot of years without you, really bad years, and now Ducati is the brand, no, in MotoGP. What is the difference from that Ducati to this one? Not in terms of bikes, or terms maybe in organization or evolution of the bike. What do you mean that is the evolution, the Ducati, the difference to be from the bottom to the top?
For me, the bike was never at the bottom. Was difficult sometimes, but never at the bottom. I think the biggest difference is the budget. When I was racing with Ducati, we had one bike at the start of the year, and at the end of the year was the same bike. We never had any budget. We could never change the chassis during the year. Even when the next year bike we got to test in the middle of the season was a big improvement, and I said, give me the chassis, please. We had no budget to produce another chassis to give me for the second half of the season. So they already had the potential to be a long way ahead. So if you imagine, they already made big improvements in the middle of the season for next year. If I was allowed to use that bike already, we would have been much more competitive. And so if I was using this bike for the rest of the season, then we can improve again for the next part of the season. But unfortunately with Ducati, when I was there, we didn't have budget. It was the same bike from the start to the finish. No changes.
So in your time, one of the problems was the same that Honda had in the past, no? You was the only rider that can ride this bike. After your retirement, Ducati passed a lot of years in the bottom, really. Also, do you think that this is a problem of the style of the rider, or is a problem like what you did of the budget, because it's impossible to make a more wide bike?
A little bit of everything. So when I was with Ducati, they had too much of a mentality of style. So we had a big problem in the windy conditions. And I don't know if you remember the old Ducati, the fairing would go through the front tire. If you look at the front of the bike, they had a line that all of the street bikes, they had this line which must go through the front tire. Now they are around the tire because this allows the wind to pass through. So we had a lot of problems because we had such a big fairing here and so much fairing in the front. When it was windy with a crosswind would push the bike, and already we struggled to turn. They had also a mentality of being low center of gravity. But the problem with low center of gravity maybe is stable, but you don't get the transfer. So I was not able to pick up the bike, find the traction, exit, lots of difficulties in that way. And then, of course, when you are low, the bike doesn't want to turn. So there is a couple of fundamental problems, which for me, in Ducati, we could have fixed earlier. But they were very set in has to be for the style. You cannot change the fairing here. These things were very difficult to make changes. Mark needs to understand if it's him or the Honda, because at the moment they're a little bit lost. As we saw, he has not really found anything since returning after the injury. He has not been as fast as before the injury. So I think for Mark, it's important for him mentally to understand if it's him or the bike, not just to try and push again one more year. I think also Mark would have spoken with the people high up in Honda, and he would understand that they're not willing to put more effort into the bike when the championship is going in the bad direction. Why the Japanese are not following in the European footsteps is because they don't want to go in this direction. It's not true motorcycle racing. This is, for me, when I look at these bikes, I don't know what I'm looking at. It's not a bike. It's not beautiful to watch. So I think Honda and Yamaha, and this is why Suzuki also pulled out, they are not getting the same information, regulations, support as the European manufacturers because it's a European championship. So for me, Mark just was needing to understand if his was himself or the bike, and he just needs to find a way to enjoy racing again because he's a little bit lost with Honda, and maybe Honda is not willing to put the effort and the money of development that the European manufacturers want to do.
Thank you very much. Gracias.
No problem.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Okay.